The reason you are not building wealth has nothing to do with how much you earn. It has everything to do with whether you have crossed 3 specific thresholds. Most people never cross the first one. A lot of people cross the second one and immediately fumble it. Marcus is 38 years old. He manages projects for a mid-sized construction firm in Charlotte. He makes $94,000 a year. By every normal measure, he is doing fine. Diane is 35. She is a dental hygienist in Columbus, making $61,000 a year. She works 4 days a week. She drives a used Accord. 7 years from now, Diane's net worth will be roughly 4 times Marcus's. Not because she got lucky, not because she inherited anything, not because she picked the right stock. The gap between them was decided years ago by a set of decisions most people never even know they are supposed to make. Marcus is not irresponsible. He is not lazy. He simply never learned that income is not what separates people who build wealth from people who don't. Milestones are. There are 3 of them. 3 specific thresholds where your financial life either accelerates or stalls. Below each one, you are grinding, and it barely shows. Cross each one, and the math starts working in your favor in ways that feel almost unfair. Think of it like pushing a car. You push, and nothing moves. And then something shifts, and suddenly it rolls on its own. That shift does not happen gradually. It happens at specific points. Here is where those points are. The first threshold is $10,000 of invested capital. Not saved, invested. That distinction matters more than most people realize, and it is worth taking 30 seconds to be precise about it. Saving means the money exists. Investing means the money is deployed, working in assets that generate returns while you sleep. A savings account paying 0.4% is not investing. That is just organized waiting. Here is why $10,000 is the specific number. Below this threshold, compounding is essentially invisible. If you put $2,000 into an index fund and the market returns 10% that year, you made $200. $200 is fine. It is not nothing, but it is not going to change how you feel about investing. It is not going to make you check your account with excitement. It is psychologically inert. Your brain does not register $200 as proof that anything is working. At $10,000, a 10% return is $1,000. That is a different experience entirely. $1,000 is a number your brain can grab onto. It is a month of groceries. It is a flight somewhere you actually want to go. It is money that feels real, generated by something other than your time. And that moment when your brain first registers that your money made real money is the ignition point. Everything before it is just waiting for the ignition. Most people never reach this threshold, and it is not because they lack discipline. I want to be really clear about that. The personal finance industry loves to frame this as a willpower problem. It is not. The actual barrier is margin. When your paycheck covers your bills with $200 left over, there is nothing to automate. You are not undisciplined. You are just doing math in a hole that does not leave room for the first step. If you do have margin, even small margin, the move is mechanical. You automate a fixed transfer out of your checking account before your brain gets involved in the decision. $50 a week, $100 a week. Whatever the number is, it leaves before you can spend it. The people who cross this threshold are not more motivated than the people who do not. They just removed motivation from the equation entirely. And once you cross it, something shifts. You start watching the number differently. You start making slightly different decisions. Not because someone told you to, because your brain now has proof that the math is real. That proof is worth more than any spreadsheet you could build. The second threshold is $100,000 in net worth. And this one is strange because it is both the most powerful milestone and the most dangerous one. The danger does not come from the market. It comes from you. First, the math, because the math here is genuinely wild. Getting from $0 to $100,000 at a 7% average return, contributing $500 a month, takes roughly 11 years. Getting from $100,000 to $200,000, same contribution, same return, takes about 5.5 years. Same effort. Same $500 a month. Half the time. That is not a coincidence. That is compounding, reaching critical mass. The base is now large enough that the market is contributing more to your growth than you are. You have crossed from being the engine to being the passenger. Somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000, something specific happens. Your annual investment returns start to exceed your annual contributions. Read that again. The market is putting in more per year than you are. You are no longer the primary source of your own wealth growth. That crossover is the entire reason the first 100,000 is the hardest. Not because saving is harder at lower balances, because below that crossover, you are doing most of the work yourself. Now here is where it gets uncomfortable. When most people hit $100,000 for the first time, they feel wealthy. And that feeling is not wrong, exactly. It is just badly timed. Because that feeling triggers something. It does not trigger one big decision. It triggers 100 small ones. A nicer apartment because you can finally afford it. A car upgrade because the old one has 200,000 miles and honestly, you deserve something reliable. A few subscriptions you keep meaning to cancel. Food delivery 4 nights a week instead of 2. None of these feel like financial decisions. They feel like living your life. But add them up and you are looking at an extra $800, $900 a month leaving your account. Money that was previously going into the compounding engine pulled out at exactly the moment the engine hits full speed. I have done this. Not the car, but the slow version of it. The gradual yes to things I would have said no to 2 years earlier. And I did not notice until I looked at what my contribution rate actually was versus what it used to be. The number had not changed, but everything around it had gotten more expensive, which meant the percentage had quietly dropped. Run the math on what that costs. If you hit $100,000 at 35 and raise your monthly spending by $900 instead of maintaining your investment rate, you arrive at 55 with roughly $300,000 less than the version of you who held the line. $300,000. Not from a bad investment, not from a layoff, from a feeling. The people who navigate this milestone correctly do something that sounds almost punishing, but is not. When they cross 100,000, they increase their contribution rate, even by 1%. They use the psychological momentum of crossing the milestone to accelerate, not to celebrate. This does not mean never enjoying your money. It means understanding that the window right after 100,000 is the highest leverage compounding period of your entire financial life. Wasting it is expensive in ways that will not show up for 20 years. Crossing 100,000 changes what is possible, but it does not mean the work is done. The third milestone does not have a fixed number, and that is exactly why most people never reach it. The third milestone is the one nobody talks about concretely because it feels too abstract to plan for, but it is actually the most specific of the three. It is the point where your investments generate enough income to cover your baseline monthly expenses without you working for it. Not your total spending, your baseline. The non-negotiable floor. Rent or mortgage, utilities, insurance, groceries, transportation, the obligations that exist whether you want them to or not. Here is how the math works. There is a principle called the 4% rule. It is a rough estimate, not a guarantee, but it is the most widely used framework for sustainable withdrawals from a diversified portfolio. It says you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio per year without drawing down the principal over a long time horizon. Which means if you flip it around, you multiply your annual baseline expenses by 25 to find the portfolio size that covers them indefinitely. Or if you want a faster calculation, take your monthly baseline and multiply by 300. That is your number. Someone with a baseline of $3,500 a month needs a portfolio of roughly $1,050,000 to reach this milestone. That sounds like a lot, until you understand that the variable that matters most is not the portfolio. It is the $3,500. Here is the comparison that changes how you think about this. Person 1 earns $130,000 a year. Nice salary. But their baseline expenses are $7,000 a month. To cover that baseline passively, they need a portfolio of $2,100,000. Person 2 earns $70,000 a year. Their baseline is $3,500 a month. They need $1,050,000. Person 2 reaches financial freedom first. Not because of better investments, not because of higher income, because the number their portfolio needs to replace is smaller. The math does not care what you earn. It only cares about the gap between what your investments generate and what your life costs to run. Every dollar you permanently remove from your baseline expenses reduces the portfolio you need and moves this milestone closer by months, sometimes years. This is the most counterintuitive truth in personal finance. The fastest path to financial freedom is not a higher salary. It is a lower denominator. A lot of people raise their denominator every time their income goes up and then wonder why freedom keeps feeling far away. The baseline creep is silent. It does not announce itself. It just quietly raises the finish line every few years until the race feels unwinnable. It is not. You just have to stop moving the finish line. So here is what to actually do with this. 3 things, and they take less than an hour total. First, calculate your invested assets. Not your savings account balance, not your car value, not your home equity, your money that is deployed in the market or in income-producing assets. If that number is below $10,000, that is your only priority right now. One thing, get across the first threshold. Set up an automatic transfer today, even if the amount feels embarrassingly small. $50 a week is $2,600 a year. Small is not the enemy. Not starting is. Second, if you are approaching or already past $100,000 in net worth, write down your current monthly contribution amount. Then look at your expenses from 2 years ago versus today. Not to feel bad about it, just to see clearly whether the baseline has quietly risen. If it has, find one thing added in the last 2 years that you could reduce. Redirect that amount back into your investment account this month. Not someday, this month. Third, calculate your baseline monthly expenses, the non-negotiables only. Then multiply by 300. Write that number down somewhere you will actually see it. A specific target changes behavior in ways that a vague idea of being wealthy never will. You cannot close a gap you have never measured. Now remember Marcus and Diane from the beginning. Marcus earns $33,000 more per year than Diane. By conventional logic, he should be further ahead. He is not, and it is not because he made bad investments or got unlucky. Marcus never crossed the first milestone until his mid-30s. When he crossed the second one, he upgraded his truck and moved to a nicer place because he had worked hard and earned it. He has never once calculated his baseline expense number. He does not know what his denominator is. Diane crossed the first milestone at 29. She held her lifestyle flat after crossing the second. She knows her number. She checks it twice a year. Marcus is not a cautionary tale about discipline. He is a cautionary tale about not knowing where the milestones are until you have already passed them. The version of you that builds real wealth is not luckier than the version that does not. They just knew where to look before they got there.